Hello DevOps people, welcome to today's live coding stream. I'm happy to have you here. As always, feel free to participate, join me in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer questions and discuss stuff that you'd like to discuss. As I've just blogged yesterday, I'll continue working on my open source project that I created especially for this stream. It's called Jupyter, and it's going to be kind of a management software for IT infrastructure. So if you have a lot of servers, if you have a lot of AWS instances, this software is supposed to make things easier to, for example, have a dashboard that shows you all your instances, both on AWS and if you have on-premise servers as well, you will see them in the same dashboard instead of seeing only parts in the AWS dashboard or in another provider's dashboard. But we are far from seeing anything at the moment. What I did recently was set up the application using the suspenders framework from Thoughtbot. I've integrated the clearance gem that adds authentication. The gem is from Thoughtbot as well. What did I do else? I added clearance. Yeah, I added a few test suites to my a few tests to my test suite. Especially I integrated Rails best practices and Brakeman, as well as Rubocop, of course, since the application will be written in Ruby. And I've set up a Docker-based dev environment. It's already running here using Docker Compose. Docker Compose starts up all the services that are necessary, mainly Postgres. I've also added Redis because I'm going to need that. And of course the application container itself. And that allows us, for example, to view the application. So that's the current state of the application. Clearance kicks in automatically because I've added a start page controller that requires authentication. So in order to render the start page controller, I need to log in first. And as you can see, the styling is very rudimentary. The Suspenders framework includes, among a lot of other handy things, a CSS framework named Bourbon. You'll probably guess which development company based in USA and London has built it. And so the styling that comes out of the box is very basic, doesn't have any margins around the page and stuff like that. And I think that's one thing I'm going to work on today. I won't go too deep into front-end development here, mainly because I have no clue in front-end development, but at least we can make it a little bit prettier. I'd also like to start something on the data side, so I'd like to add a model or two that allow me to get a feel how the application is going to work and get my mind into the design of the whole data scheme. So, I also should have an account, and I already don't remember it anymore. I think I used admin@example.com. And something like test 1, 2, 3. Nope. Well, that gives us opportunity to look at the shell side of things. Not only will I be able to access the database here, which shouldn't be too much of a problem. I'll just do docker compose exec app rails c. And that should give me a Rails console into my development instance here. Takes a while to load everything, but then I have here. Oh, I've actually used my own email address here. Okay, that would even enable me to use the forgot password functionality. But yeah, I've used test 1, 2, 3 as the password. Okay, so I can sign in and I can sign out again. That is something at least that is working at the moment. Nice. Okay, the other thing I can run in Docker Compose is, of course, the test suite itself. So if I just call rake, that should launch a sequence of tests, starting with Robocop. Oh no, it's starting with RSpec. That's fine as well. And then it checks the Ruby Advisory DB for vulnerable gems. Also a very important check so that we don't have any vulnerable components in our application. Now it's going to run, or it is running Robocop. And I think I've resolved all the minor style issues that I had at the start. So how is everyone out there? I'm okay today. Yeah, it's been a nice day so far. Weather outside isn't too enticing to leave the house. I was at Starbucks today and got my usual coffee, my latte, and I'll probably take another walk later to simply get a bit of motion and a bit of exercise. But other than that, I'm pretty happy to be in here, and I already have my office heater on because it's getting colder even here in Ireland. It won't get too cold, but cold enough to get cold feet, I guess. And so I'm happy about my little electrical office heater here. Okay, Robocop didn't have too much to inspect, but didn't find any issues either. And Rails best practices didn't as well. And now we have Brakeman. That is a gem that mainly checks things like authentication, general web application security, cross-site scripting and things like that. All right then, so we're good to go. And I'd say we start with tweaking the layout a bit. Since I'd like to have a consistent coding workflow here, I'll go ahead and create a new issue. And we'll just call it Pretty Up Basic Layout. And we'll say tweak the layout a bit so it's easier on the eye. this is going to be an enhancement. I'll submit that. And this is going to be issue number 10. So I create a new branch starting with 10. And I'll just call it layout. Now let's go into VS Code. I'm still surprised by myself that I've switched from Vim to Code, but I really like it so far. It does make more use of my graphical user interface here than Vim does, even the windowed version. So I guess it looks like it's going to stick. Here I'll only change a few minor things. We have the application.scss file, which is going to be my jumping off point for the styling. And there is going to be the app. Wait, here, views, application, oh no, layouts, application, HTML, and that's where I'll do most of the changes now. So, what I've done is I'm not too familiar with Bourbon, and I haven't spent too much time using it, even though I've used it in previous projects. But as soon as I was happy with the layout and the visual style, I stopped doing work there. So I'm really not very fluent, let's put it that way. That's also why I'll only do incremental changes. I've picked up a blog post from Thoughtbot where they describe how to do the initial styling for a middleman-based website, and of course, since it's mainly about Bourbon, the same things will apply to Ruby on Rails as well. So what I'm going to do is change the layout a bit here. I'll copy and paste the viewport definition. Oh, that's already in there. That's nice. What does it say here? Configure default and control and view specific titles in config localhost. Okay, that's okay. So I guess I'll add a class to my body tag. No, I don't. I'll introduce a main tag. My HTML knowledge is so old that I even don't, that I'm even not familiar with these, I guess they are HTML5 tags, elements. But anyway, we'll keep the flashes at the top of the page, as well as the signed in stuff, so I guess we'll put something here. Let's call it header. If you are more familiar with that stuff and have any tips for me, if there is a header tag or something that I should use here, then feel free to point me to it. I'm happy for any help here, because I'm really out of my depth here. And so I'll add another. Okay, there are sections now. Well, that's okay. I call it section then, I guess. And since we don't have a blog, we don't call it post container, we call it page content, because that's going to be the main content here. So I guess this thing here up there is a section as well. Yeah, it's a bit more specific than div, but very, very similar, I guess. Okay, let's indent this part. So far the application should still render without any visual changes or visible changes. Makes sense to have this sidebar here, and that's going to be below the header. And we just add some placeholder content here. Of course, at the moment it won't render as a sidebar, and that's why I'm going to add these styles as well. I'll add these to the application as CSS for the time being. I'll probably move them into their own files later. We'll have the container, which uses the grid container include here. That's part of or provided by the Bourbon, Neat, and Bitters trio that ThoughtBot have built. SiteNav gets 4 columns, and the page content is going to get 8 columns, adding up to 12. That at least I do know. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, 4 to 8 might even be a bit unbalanced. We could do something like 3 to 9 or something. I guess I'll close this and let's just go to the definition. I don't think I'll need that much space for the sidebar. That looks okay. Let's separate the header as well. I use the header ID. So margin that's not what I wanted. I wanted to have. Wait, it starts from the top right, and then I'd like to have a 1 or 2 EM space below. Yeah, that's better. Let's do some visible separation as well. Border bottom 1 pixel solid black. Okay. What we could do is add at least the home link. That's certain to be necessary. Okay. Let's see. Test 1, 2, 3. Sign in. We'll have to change that later, but it doesn't annoy me too much at the moment. Okay, I'll stay logged in. I guess we can leave it at that for the time being until we have a bit more functionality that needs to be rendered. Which means I can already commit and test and merge that stuff. Well, I don't think tests will uncover anything here. But anyway, let me do commit. Improve, or let's call it basic style improvement. And it resolves issue number 10. Let's run a test anyway. Okay, so that will resolve the layout issue as soon as we merge it, which I'm going to do in a second. And that brings me to the data model. To be honest, I haven't thought too much about the data model yet. What I do know is that we'll have some kind of IT resources, servers, cloud instances, stuff like that. And these resources will have certain attributes. They will have something like an IP address, or they have might even have internal resources like a disk or something. I'm not even sure. Yeah, we should be able to say, okay, give me all the servers that have a certain type of network interface card built in, because they were recalled by the vendor, and we need to take care of that. So we'll probably have something like a resource. We'll have resource types. We have something like a resource provider. For example, AWS will provide us with EC2 instances. They'll have attributes and they'll have components. So we can say, okay, give me all the resources that have a certain RAID controller as a component. I guess we could start with that. What do you think? Any ideas? Let's do some brainstorming here. And then we'll be more specific by saying, okay, this particular resource is an EC2 instance provided by AWS, or it's an S3 bucket provided by AWS, or it's a droplet provided by DigitalOcean, something like that. Okay. So let's do an, well, the tests ran successfully, of course, so didn't expect anything else, so we can go ahead and merge this into master and can delete branch 10 layout, which is a Git macro that I've created that deletes the local branch as well as the remote branch if it exists. In this case, it didn't exist because I didn't even push the branch. And why not? Let's push this. That way you can see the changes yourselves. They'll be on github.com/gvis/Jupiter. And I'll go ahead and create a new issue. Create basic data model. Set up a few models that help us think more deeply about the data model. So I don't think this will stand the test of time. This will be some initial setup. I very much believe in continuous improvement and refactoring, so I'm not hesitant to create a few models now, knowing full well that they'll be replaced, changed, deleted later, and that'll be an interesting exercise in how to maintain code like this and make incremental changes that don't require huge branches with pull requests over 13 files and things like that. So we can get into the continuous deployment mindset by making small changes and shipping them, and then making another few changes and shipping them as well. Good. So what I'm going to start with is creating a new branch. It's 11 data model. And now we'll create a few things. So I think I'll use the Rails scaffolding generator. Because it'll create everything in one go. We'll get the data model, we'll get a controller and a few basic views as well, I think. So at least in this first round, I'll probably use a scaffold. Later I might generate models and controllers separately when I have a better idea of what I'm actually creating, but this will get us running. Yeah, this will get us hitting the ground quickly. So, question, do I run this locally on my machine here, or do I run it in the container? I'll run it in the container because the Rails generator will try and connect to the database, and that's not available on my Mac here, but will be available in the application container. So I use the same Docker Compose exec app that I've used previously to run the test suite, and this time I'll do Rails generate scaffold, and let's call the first thing resource provider, and I guess the provider will at least have a name like AWS or something like that. And I think That'll be enough for a start. Lots of stuff that gets generated. That's nice. I'll also get the migration to add tables to the database, and I'll go over these a bit later. Now, I'd like to associate a resource, a server, or something like that with this provider. And that requires a decision. Do I start with a more abstract resource, or do I start creating more specific things like EC2 instance or something like that, droplet, something in that regard? Not sure. I'll probably create a resource. It'll at least give me a base class that I'll be able to make more specific later in inherited classes. I could even do something like single table inheritance if I want to, but I'm not sure if I do want to. And of course we could create a whole system that, for example, adds a resource type. And that resource type then again has certain attributes that each of these resources has. So for example, the resource type EC2 instance could then have attributes like its IP address, its instance type, things like that. Well, that sounds at least like it makes sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a resource type. It'll have a name, and it'll have a provider, which is a reference to the resource provider, and I'm already regretting having it called resource provider. I guess I'll just call it provider. I'm going to delete the stuff that's been generated so far, which is easy. And I'll just call it provider. Good thing I haven't run the migrations yet. If there's anything you'd like to throw in, or if, for example, my fonts are too small or I'm going too quickly, just let me know in the chat. Okay, now we have a provider, and now I'd like to create a resource type. Which also has a name, and it has a provider as something that it references, so we'll get an association here. Okay. And then we'll get something like resource type attributes. That has a name. And references a resource. Sorry. And to complete everything, we'll create a resource table or resource model. Not sure if it should have a name. Oh, we need something to reference it. Let's give it a name. And it has a type. In that case, I call it resource type, because we have that model as, already. Hey, Graceful Potato, how you doing? You just asked, isn't it references? I think we'll see. I think it's reference because that's the type of the attribute. So string is the type of the name attribute, and reference is the type of the resource type. Attribute. It might look differently in the migration. No, it's T reference here as well. In the model, though, we have some verb-like stuff. There's a dash too much. Oh, it's app models. Oh, it doesn't contain anything. So in the model itself, we'll have things like belongs to or has body and things like that. So that it's verbs there, but in the data model definition here, it's more nouns. So just to finish my previous thought, we now have resource types and their resource type attributes, and a specific resource. Then we'll have resource attributes that only reference a specific resource and a specific resource type attribute. And then they'll have a value, and I think our values will be store the strings, and we'll probably have something like our own validation methods that make sure that, for example, an IP address string looks like an IP address, and say a numeric value string looks like a numeric value. So this is escalating quickly with complexity. Sure, yeah, I'll just run the migrations and then we'll see. I'll be happy to add an S if I missed that. To be honest, things like that I don't even make much effort in terms of memorizing them, because my tools will correct me pretty quickly. Okay, so let's take a look at these migrations again. They're in the DB folder. So I'll have a resource with the name and it references a resource type. Then we'll have the resource types here. They have a name and a provider. Resource types have attributes. Wait, that's not right. A resource type attribute should reference a resource type. And it'll have some validation stuff or type casting stuff later, so we can actually define, okay, this resource type attribute is an actual string, it's a number, or it's an IP address or something like that. So the resource type attribute always references its type, and the resource attribute, which are the attributes of a specific resource, they'll reference a resource and they'll reference a resource type attribute and have a value. Okay, I think we're good. Let's try and run the migration then. Rails DB migrate. Boom. Might a certain potato be right here? Undefined method reference. Did you mean references? Okay. Let's fix this. No reference here, no reference here. Let's give it another try. Thank you, Graceful Potato. Happy to have you here. That's not. Okay. So we'll have to take a look at our models now, because they are lacking a lot of stuff. For example, a resource type is supposed to belong to a provider. Then a resource type attribute belongs to a resource type. Did we associate a resource with a provider? No, we did not. We associated it with a resource type, and that then belongs to a provider, which does make sense. Yeah, okay. A resource attribute, though, belongs to a resource, and it belongs to a resource type attribute. Which also means that a resource has many resource attributes. A provider has many resource types. A resource attribute has many, no, a resource type attribute has many resource attributes. And the resource type has many resources. I think that should close the circle. Provider has many resource types. Yes, they do. They have a lot. How many resource types does AWS have? I think they go into the tens, if not into the hundreds now. Okay. That's that. Let's run the migration for the test environment as well. I assume the scaffolding created quite a number of model spec files as well, all with only a dummy example, but at least we should be able to run rake test. And it's good to have Rubocop take a look at the stuff that's auto-generated, so even these files adhere to our... Oh, it's just Rake in this case. So they adhere to our style guide. It's a bit of a pity. Oh, that doesn't look good. It's a bit of a pity. The controllers. Yeah, we need to sanitize the controller stuff. And we don't have any roads. Do you use default Rubocop config in Rails? No, I don't. I have my own Rubocop style definition that is mostly default stuff, but I have a few specific things where I deviate from the default settings in terms of ending items in a list with commas, for example. So I'd like to have commas even after the last list item, so I can, if I want, shuffle them around without taking care of missing commas, things like that. And you'll be able to see my Rubocop YAML file on the GitHub repository. So yeah, it does have a few things where I deviate, and yeah, the thing with Rubocop is that it doesn't play too well with auto-generated stuff. For example, I have a style where I only use double quotes, except if single quotes make things more readable or are necessary in terms of escaping. But I default heavily towards double quotes, and many generators use single quotes, and that's where I get lots of Rubocop warnings and errors. Sorry, I have a bit of a chest cold. A lot of errors that I need to fix myself. And that's actually a thing where I miss Vim, because Vim has a nice plugin that allows me to replace double quotes with single quotes, or single quotes with double quotes, or curly brackets with square brackets and things like that. And Visual Studio Code doesn't have anything like that, as far as I know. So I might even use Vim here to replace things like that. But I think my problem is something else here. RSpec couldn't even run the resource provider controller because it doesn't have any routes. Okay. I thought Scaffold would create a few routes automatically. So let's take a look at config. Where is it? Config. Routes RB. It does add the resources. Let's put the root entry up here. Okay. Looking at that, I'm not even too happy that I used resources as a table name. But anyway, we'll see if that needs to be changed later. Just a second. Okay, I think I live. So I guess it is because no, we only require login for the homepage controller. So why doesn't this work out of the box? It doesn't have a route for the new action because the controller probably doesn't have a new verb. What we're talking about, resource provider. Oh, of course. I thought I deleted the resource providers stuff. Why do we even have something like this? Wait. It's in spec controllers, resource providers controller spec. Huh. How did that survive my reset? Resource providers controller. Ah, crap. Somehow I didn't... Oh, I should have used git clean because my changes hadn't even been committed, so the reset just didn't remove that stuff. Good thing to learn. Know what git reset actually does. Okay, so, hey Slayer Darth, how are you? Nice to have you on the stream again. Mir geht es prima ebenfalls. Oh, I even speak English when I'm speaking Deutsch. Yeah, I'm fine. Happy to have you here. Okay, let me just blow my nose as well. Okay, so we'll have to reset our database because we rolled out the resource providers stuff involuntarily, but let me check if the tests are going to work so far. So did you have German in school then? It did finish. It ran 66 examples with 61 pending, so 5 examples actually did get executed. Okay. Not a bad feat. Now let's see what Rubocop has to say about my auto-generated stuff. Please be gentle. Still only inspected one file. That's not possible. Rubocop, oh, you've been lazy. How did it only run one single file? That's strange. So we have a few things in views. Where Rails best practice says don't use instance variables with the at in front and use local variables instead. Yeah, that makes sense. But other than that, that's okay. But Rubocop should inspect a bit more if I run bundle exec Rubocop on my repository here. It still does only inspect one file. Huh? What is happening? Okay, I have to at least change this. Well, what Ruby version are you running? It's even 2.5, isn't it? Yeah. So. One of our old friends from the area, one of their sons studied German at uni, and he got a job as Lidl's chief wine buyer in the UK. Yeah. Of course, German gets you into these big discounters like Lidl or Aldi. Management material, dude. Okay, now at least it tells me that my config RU of all files has a missing magic comment. You're not supposed to check the config RU. Really don't need you to do this. I'd rather have you. Oh, does Rubocop only check stuff that's in Git? Huh. Let's see. We'll check in these changes. And I'll call it create initial models and other scaffolding. Resolves number 11. Now let's see what Rubocop does. Oh, you got your Sinatra API deployed. Heraldify. Remind me again, what does your API do? It still does not inspect any files. And I explicitly said to include config RU up there. Well, Why not? So, still, can someone... Ah, okay, a new CMS. I never had to deal with Webpack so far. I'm pretty happy that I don't have to muck around with these asset pipelines and things like that. As I said before, I'm far from being a front-end developer. I'm an ops guy trying to be a good software engineer as well. These are the things that drive me crazy. This should work out of the box. You'll just say Rubocop dot and that's it, and it'll throw a lot of errors, and you have your work cut out for you. And then it tells me inspecting 0 files. Oh, don't go there. Don't go there. My choice of workstation doesn't have anything to do with the kind of work I deliver. I'd claim quite the opposite, that my workstation allows me to reach that goal. Yeah. Good software engineer, but no idea how to work Rubocop. Okay. That's something I'd really like to resolve here, because coding style is one of the main things that I'd like to demonstrate on this live stream, and if my linter doesn't work, that's not good. So let's see, Rubocop. We could try and run it without the dot. Okay, so it inspects the config RU again, and okay, I'm fine with making this change here. Let's simply include it and go ahead. Okay. Come on, you guys. What am I missing? Let's help it a bit. What? Hello? Are you kidding me? The first one, the in my Rubocop YAML. Inside all cops. Target Ruby version? Or do you mean this is the only include I make? So, oh dear. Could it be that Rubocop behavior has changed over time and I'm now running a newer version than I'm used to, and I'll have to explicitly say, okay, check everything that's .rb? Oh man. Let's see. Ha, here we go. Okay, 305. Well, yeah. This frozen string literal thing, we'll need to get that sorted because that's probably 300 out of 305. Alrighty. Okay, so yeah, that's probably simply because I don't have this in my default Rubocop YAML, in my root Rubocop YAML, and because it wasn't necessary so far, but it looks like newer versions of Rubocop require an explicit include here, or previous versions of Rubocop had that explicit or implicit include, and now I have to make it explicit. Alrighty. Yeah, this frozen string literal. Why do I have to have that? Style frozen literal comment stuff thingy. It's a style cop. Frozen string literal comment. This cop is designed to help upgrade to Ruby 3.0. It will add the comment frozen string literal to top of files to enable frozen string literals. Frozen string literal will be found in the comment will be added below a shebang and encoding comment. The frozen string literal comment is only valid in Ruby 2.3 plus. So, as I understand it, this allows me to simply add that comment, and I don't have to add .freeze to every of my constants. And I'll have to add it to each and every file. Really? Frozen string literals may be default in Ruby 3.0. But still, and that's because I set the target Ruby version to 2.3 plus. I set it to 2.5. Oh, I've never used Rubocop-A. Do an auto repair. Why not? But can I limit it to this specific cop? Autocorrect. Yeah, experimental use with caution. Yeah, that's why I'm cautious. Wait. So that should be something like only -- only. So if I run only Rubocop for style frozen string literal comment, I should get only these warnings. And we'll see how many of them there are. 40. And now we can tell Robocop to auto-repair that. That's a very good tip, Graceful Potato. Thank you for that. That way we can now focus on the stuff that's more interesting. Still 265. So yeah, that's what I meant previously. I'd like to prefer double quoted strings, but that I could fix, auto-fix as well. That's a handy thing. I don't know why I haven't used it before. Gracious me, how many times I had to go through files and fix that stuff manually. See? Even I benefit from doing a live stream. 236, okay. Lots of that stuff can be auto-repaired. Space inside hash literal braces. Yeah. We'll fix this. And down to 100. Nice. We're also reaching the end of my lifetime. No, not lifetime, my live streaming time. Okay, trailing white space. Yeah, please fix it. Okay, only one offense. Lots of lines that are too long. Especially in the controllers. Well, I'd like to fix that myself. But something like empty lines around block body can be auto-repaired. I love it. My life just got so much easier. No. Okay, so percent literal delimiters should use square brackets. That's okay. We can fix that. And the same we can do with the block delimiters. Is it possible to auto-fix offenses like line is too long? Well, we could give it a try. Just let me commit my stuff first. Now we are pretty much down to line length violations, I guess. Yeah, looks like it. And I'm not too sure if Robocop can deal with that properly, but we'll see. Here we have indentation consistency and indentation width. Let's fix these. Let's fix the easy stuff first. And then we'll finally take a look at the line length stuff. Here, align parameters. Even if it's just a single one, at least we are now down to 89 offenses. So let's see. Line length, lots of line length stuff. Then we'll have a few empty methods because all these controller endpoints don't have any code yet. We can get rid of the comment indentation and empty lines. Empty lines around access modifier, okay. That's a really great thing, this auto repair. Especially with inherited code or auto-generated code. Comment indentation should be fixed now. Lots of empty methods and mostly line length. I'd be curious to see how this auto repair works, if it's just a lot of regular expression magic. So let's see what's left if we filter out the line length stuff. Let's only get the lines that don't have white space, don't start with white space. Which means something like this. I still got... Oh. And you should do it the other way around, I guess. Yeah. Oh. Too much. Why? Grab everything that starts with some kind of character. Yep, and now filter out matrix line length. Empty methods, a few symbol arrays, and that's that. And the empty lines around class body. Okay. Let's fix this one. And I guess then we'll give matrix line length a try. I have a Git alias that I can simply call with GWIP, which does a work in progress commit. So I don't have to think of a comment. I'll rebase all these changes later anyway, so I'll get rid of these ugly interim commits. So Now let's see what happens if we do a matrix line length. No, it can't. It doesn't do... Did I? Yeah, I did try an auto repair, but it obviously doesn't have a correction method. So I'll have to deal with these things myself, which certainly isn't live stream material. I'll do that, I guess, tomorrow before my next live stream, which will be on Thursday at the same time. Thanks for joining me here. Thanks for your feedback, especially to Graceful Potato for the -A hint. If you liked what you saw, please follow me on Twitch. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I'll post the recording of today's session, simply because YouTube will keep it and Twitch will delete this recording after a few days. And follow my Twitter account, which you will see down here. Max120. So I'll have to tell it where to split the line. Okay, I'll give that a try. But I'll call it a day now. I'll let you know on Thursday if I had to do a lot of manual work, or if Robocop came to the rescue once more. Yeah, so follow me on Twitch, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on Twitter, so you'll get my notifications when I'm going to stream next. But it's regularly Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. British and Ireland time. So 4:30 Central European time. And I hope I'll see you again on Thursday. Thank you and take care.